This wall was once cool, but it's time to give it a facelift. We wanted to redo this whole thing for as cheap as possible, and we accomplished that, considering the paint was half the cost. It totaled $130, and if you're interested, stick around and I'm going to show you how to get this done. Before we go any further, we're going to spend time on the measurements because the measurements are what's going to make sure everything is perfect. So to say this is the design we want, we have two things to do first. We need to measure our width, which is from side to side, excluding any moldings. In our case, it's 123.5 inches. And we need to measure our height. Our height here is going to be 107 inches minus 4 inches for that baseboard, which gives us a total of 103 inches. In this case, we're removing trim and molding because our design is contained within a certain space. Now, when we go back to our drawing, we need to figure out how big our boxes are going to be. That's what this part is about. We're going to first start with our width. So we decided to keep a gap of 3.5 inches, and we're going to keep that uniform throughout our whole design. So that means between any component, so any small square or that line or the larger rectangle, we're going to have 3.5 inches of space. Now what that means for our math, we're going to take away 3.5 inches 4 times from our width, which is going to give us a total of 109.5 inches. If your design was like 4 rectangles side by side, in this case you might have 5 gaps. So just make sure you count your gaps accordingly based on what dimension you're measuring. For our height, it's the exact same thing, but in this case, we decided to add like a little bar in the middle. So we need to take that thickness of the bar into account. For us, it was 0.75 inches. So once we do the math there, we ended off with 88.25 inches. The values for width and height here are going to correlate to how big your boxes are going to be based on your design. In our case, we decided to make the bottom row of boxes a third the size of the ones above. Based on our design, the width for all the boxes are the same. The only thing that differs is the height. The boxes above are twice the height of the boxes below. So some simple math will give you the numbers. You can pause the screen, add it up, and see if it makes sense. So as another example, say you wanted a similar design but the boxes to be equal. The only difference in your calculation here is going to be how you're dividing your height. In this case, because you want equal lengths above and below, we're just dividing height by 2, and based on that, you'll have an equal set of boxes above and an equal set of boxes below. You can really customize this as much as you want. Definitely recommend drawing things out on pen and paper before you go ahead and make any cuts. You just want to make sure everything checks out. As an extra step of precaution, what you could do is go ahead and cut the box above and below for a specific column and tape it to the wall. That's what we are doing here in this clip. We're taping things to the wall to make sure the spacing and everything makes sense. The video sadly cut out because our camera stopped working at the moment, but the overall idea is you want it to kind of look like this. Just to take a step back, visualize it, and if it makes sense, you can move on to the next step. Here, we're just using a laser level to make sure everything is super straight. If it is straight, we already measured the gaps in between things, so we're going ahead and stapling it in as we check every single row and column. Now you probably don't need a laser level, but it does make things a lot easier. I think they're around $50 at your local hardware store, or you can get it on Amazon, but I think it's a pretty versatile tool to have overall. It could be a bit finicky though. Nail wise, I just hooked my nail gun to an air compressor, and I think the size of the nails were 1.5 inches. It might be overkill, but it did a good job of holding things in. Here I'm using some wood filler to fill in the pinholes left by the nail gun and the uneven cuts that I had. So you'll see in a second what I mean by that. Like here, for example, you can see it's not the best join. I wasn't perfect with cutting, but I think the wood filler does a really good job of filling things in. And once you paint it, you can't really tell the difference. So once that dried and I sanded it down, I decided to quickly paint things over. I had to do 2 coats, but once the first coat dried and the second coat was applied, man, this thing looked amazing. And trust me, you don't see any imperfections in this if you calculated and followed things as we mentioned in this video. So we're about to show you the final product here. If you enjoyed this little video, like, comment, and subscribe, as we got a lot more content coming soon, and I hope you liked it.